Welcome to Conversations with Chuck Bennington. I'm Chuck Bennington, and I don't know it all, and I don't pretend to, but I do know that I love my son, and I want him to have a better, faster, smoother journey through the trials and tribulations of life than I had myself. So here's my documented journey, stories, lessons, and experiences that are really for you, buddy. I love you.
And welcome to another episode of Conversations with Chuck and another special guest, Mr. Drew Zaro. How are you, Drew?
Hi, I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. It's lovely to have you on. And Chuck here, fresh face Chuck. For those who are watching the podcast, this is the first look of Chuck in his new look.
The new.
The new, which we've enjoyed this week. I know this is the
funny,
second
man.
or
Like,
third time
so
I've seen
few
it.
people have ever seen me without a beard. It was like, I didn't even think about there ever being an alternate reality whereupon I didn't see you.
You look like my friend Chuck, but not.
Yeah. I know the first call I got on yesterday, I was like, whoa.
Super fucking weird getting actual legitimate carded.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Really?
Got carded
Wow.
yesterday. I was like, huh?
Like, I'm so old.
You're like, you need to see what? Why? Oh yeah, that's right. I'm like, fuck.
Oh, that is.
Let me come at you with some fucking action taxes and some bills. You have no doubts that I am beyond 21.
All right. So this was a good chance, Drew, for us to bring you on to the Conversations with Chuck, is to talk a little bit about your journey through life with Chuck. I guess that you two have known each other, and we share thoughts here on reflections on life and where we've been and where we're going. So I'll let Chuck lead away.
Man, that's weird. Usually you lead in the beginning. No, that's cool. I would say, despite our overall fairly minimal amount of like face-to-face human interaction over the last few years, Drew really has become one of the best friends that I've ever had in my life. And I don't want to speak for him because that might be like very much so mean to see.
Sorry to tell you, Chuck. Actually,
that's fine, dude. I'd be okay with that. No, Drew has been an incredible just person that the universe, I think, like kind of put in my path in like the right place at the right time. Really for both of us, I think. We met at a gymnastic course seminar and blah, 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 fitness. But really it was having the ability to connect, probably a little bit of like where I initially jumped on when you guys were talking, is like the minds, like the business mind and the fitness mind, of like the virtuous mind, the opportunities that we have to meet people who can help us curate better frameworks to view life through are fucking few and far between. Like you can have somebody on the other side like give something to you, but I haven't had a lot of friends that I check as many similarity boxes with that I've had the ability to engage in two-way conversations of really like improving our own thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know what you wanted me to get at, Lisa, but anyway, like, yeah, I fucking love Drew. He's a rad dude. He's I'll let him kind of like give a little bit of his backstory, but he's an important person in my life, and I see that only growing in significance as we move through the seasons of life to come. And as well-intended as many friendships are to remain connected over distance, Drew and I have never had the ability to have a relationship of convenience. And so where I draw a similar analog in my mind is like for Vanessa and I, like the nature of highly distanced remote communication forces real conversation, deep conversation, like uncomfortable shit. And I think the amount of like bonding that we've had to, or that we've been able to enjoy through that, makes it very easy for me to sit back and be like, dude, I can't picture a version of my life that exists where Drew's not a fixture for both Vanessa and I personally and professionally. Drew's also one of you are the best combination of a personal and professional relationship that I've ever had in my life. And for like context,
I'd say the same.
Just like for anybody that doesn't know, and Drew will get into his backstory, he is Vanessa and I's financial advisor, and he has been fucking instrumental in changing so much of the money structure in our life. Not necessarily the stories. I think relative to like probably the average client coming in, like we have pretty reasonable sound beliefs and viewpoints and structures and habits around money, but like to do something more significant with it. That was like the catalyst for Drew in the professional sense. And it's been the best working relationship that I've ever had that has crossed both boundaries of personal and professional. And I think it's allowed me to rewrite some of my own expectations for what I would like to see in the future when I have relationships that are both personal and professional. Because I'm like, nope, I've got a really good example of how this should work. And so let's just do the thing that should work. Otherwise, if we can't, then we're probably not the right fit. Anyway.
Yeah. I think to kind of go off that, I'd agree with you. I have, and you and I have talked about this, Chuck, I think at length, is I have a few friends left from childhood. I think a lot of us shed those as we kind of grow older. I'll talk about my background here in a second, but I left essentially where I grew up for 13 years. I was in the Marine Corps, and I still have a few of those childhood relationships left, but they're not the same as the ones that I've developed as an adult, where I actually have endured things rather than just we share the same soccer team, we share the same elementary school, we share the same graduating high school, things like that. Like those are similarities and they're relevant, but they don't necessarily, I think, explore the ups and downs of life, like finding somebody who's, mid-20s, mid-30s, mid-40s that has already been through some things and doesn't know this, but they're coming up on some other things that they're going to have to get through. And when you can't have conversations it feels uncomfortable to have conversations, like sometimes it is with my childhood friends, like deep ones where you're like, hey, these are my feelings. I don't understand them. Can you help me? But then you can have that with somebody else. It's almost like, going to a real nice gelato place, and you can taste the difference of what a good gelato is, or just going to the convenience store and grabbing like a quick ice cream. There's a monstrous difference in it. They're both going to check the box of ice cream, but it's not going to do what you need it to do if you're looking for the kind of maximum value, or if you are going to spend time having an ice cream. I want the best one I can have. If I want to have a good conversation with somebody, I'm probably going to default to the people that I know are really ready to get a little bit deeper than just the surface level. Hey, how are you? What's new? How are the kids? How's the wife? It's certainly been like that for Chuck and I. And at first it was like that. But as him and I kind of allowed ourselves to be more vulnerable, it allowed us to kind of explore a way deeper level to our relationship that we found that we both enjoyed. Whether we left each other with more questions than when we started, it almost always was a result of exploring what was actually happening inside of our mindset, whether as they relate to our biases or the other person's biases. But having that other perspective has really kind of fed the growth of our relationship in a way that I feel like is really healthy. And like Chuck said, we can go weeks without really talking. We pretty much are DMing each other every single day with memes and things like that. Is very surface level stuff, but we can go weeks without really talking. And then as soon as we get back on the phone or on a actual focused text message thread, it gets really deep really fast, but in a way that only adds value, I think, to both of our lives.
Yeah, and like listening to you talk through that, I'll add one piece, and then I want you to give a little bit of your background, because I think that like contextualizes it for Liam in the future, but also for like a lot of what it is that we're even fucking talking about. I'll save that for later. Relative to just the relationship piece, one thing that I have noticed is nice is I've been in a lot of coaching-based relationships in either direction, right? Like me coaching someone else or someone coaching me. But what I've enjoyed with Drew is being challenged in both directions on a regular basis. And that, I think, is not always the case. And like, Lisa, you can think about your own coaching calls that you've had with FitFiliate, and then your coaching calls with your clients in FitFiliate. How often do you really get to exchange the difficult questions both directions? Like, that is an incredibly powerful dynamic to have. And so that's huge. And maybe like the little life lessons to take out of it is like, find people that can have a quality of conversation that is valuable to you. And probably one of the pieces of the litmus test would be like the quantity and quality of questions in either direction, rather than like advice and guidance. So I'll leave it with that right there. And then I've got a story from yesterday that involves you only secondhand in story time. Let's learn a little bit about who Drew is and where he comes from.
So I grew up in South Shore, Massachusetts. I currently live in South Shore, Massachusetts. I took a long hiatus though. At age 20, I joined the Marine Corps, and I spent 13 years in the Marine Corps as an intelligence analyst. Went everywhere. I spent 18 months in Monterey, California, learning Arabic, followed by 2 combat deployments to Anbar Province, Iraq, which both were mostly spent in Fallujah. Left there and thought I was going to get out. Plans changed. My then wife at the time was pregnant with our first child and decided to stay in a little bit longer. So I went and became a teacher at the same schoolhouse that I learned to be an intelligence analyst. Planned on getting out after that. And that changed again because I had an opportunity because of my language aptitude to go spend 3+ years in Croatia. So I spent a year working for Defense Intelligence Agency to be trained as a diplomat and also to acquire a new language, being Croatian in that regard. And then spent 3+ years with my then wife and my son and my daughter in Croatia working at the embassy. So I was the senior Marine Corps representative, senior Marine Corps diplomat for the United States in Croatia. And some of my responsibilities included facilitating U.S. ship visits to the Croatian naval ports, and then other things that are a little bit more discreet as they relate to Defense Intelligence Agency. And that job was absolutely incredible. That was the point in my life where I realized I don't have any say in where I go from here, meaning the Marine Corps is going to take me and put me where they want. And I was kind of sick of that. I didn't have any permanence. My son was just diagnosed, I think it was 2016, summer 2016, on the autism spectrum. So that for me was a lit candle of it's time to figure things out because we don't know what this future looks like. And when your child is diagnosed on the autism spectrum, you really don't know where that spectrum position is going to be. 6 or 7. Okay. So I think teachers are keen on figuring out those things first, second grade. So kindergarten to second grade is like when they're really looking at those things that you probably wouldn't see them as a parent at home in your own household. It's your kids, so you kind of assume that, hey, these are all normal things, and a teacher is able to see, like, in a sample size of 30 students per year, like those are not normal. You should kind of look into this.
Pattern interrupt. It's like one of these things is not like the other ones.
Yeah,
like it's not in a bad sense. It's just like humans recognize patterns.
Yeah,
a disproportionate amount of like seeing the data set of the typical pattern. And so, yeah, they probably pick out a whole lot more. They're like, exactly. I've worked with 30,000 kids in my career. Like, I see things that you don't. You've had exactly 2 kids.
Yeah, exactly. It was that exactly. And I remember we were in Croatia, and I had to take him to London because the military healthcare system, their closest facility where we could kind of get him assessed, was going to be through London. So him and I took a trip up there, and 2 trips up there that summer, and the results came back that he was on the autism spectrum, and we'd kind of have to further investigate what that looks like in terms of the special treatment he might need or might not need. So that's the point at which I was like, oh shit, I don't feel like I have control here, and consider at this point, I'm a college graduate. I'm a Marine. I've been in for 13 years. I've seen 2 combat deployments. So it's easy to say that I had an alpha male mentality. I'm very much a problem solver. I'm good at breaking down complex situations and making them more palatable and solvable. And this one, I had no idea what to do. I was just like, I don't know how to handle this. And so my first thought was, I have to remove as many variables as I can. The biggest variable that I could remove for permanence and stability was the Marine Corps. At the time we were looking at Syria was becoming a hot button in terms of international politics. And so I knew that it was only a matter of time before I got deployed in support of operations in Syria or maybe North Africa. And then obviously things have gone even further then with Afghanistan and Ukraine. And so I look back now, I realize that was a really good decision for me to make for the reasons I made it, but it was very hard. And Lisa and I were talking about that beforehand, before we kind of got on here, is how difficult situations, difficult decisions where you're kind of letting something go in the moment feel very painful, but later on down the line, when you can reflect, you tend to find value in those that you didn't see in the moment. And I've seen a lot of value in that. The big thing that I think has added value to my life in that departure from the Marine Corps is I was able to coach. And that's kind of how I met you is I ended up finding myself in a position late in the Marine Corps. I'd already started CrossFit. I don't know. I was exposed to it probably 2010, 2011. And a lot of military branches and military units were starting to experiment with it. The Army, I think, was the only one to really fold it in completely. But I remember trying it out as probably a sergeant or something like that in 2010, 2011, and I loved it. It was fun, but I also was not fully bought in on it yet. But what I discovered is like, okay, I'm learning how to weightlift. I'm learning how to do deadlifts. I'm learning how to do all of these things. And I've kind of done them before, but I was like, my then wife at the time, I was like, I don't know how to teach this person. I had a friend at the gym. He's like, can you teach me how to do it clean? And I was like, no, I have no idea how I can do it.
It goes from the ground to your shoulders.
I just can't. Yeah, just
figure it out.
Just hold onto the bar and then you just do it. But that wasn't good coaching. So like I realized, like, while I'm an athletic person, I pick things up quickly, but I have no idea how to relay that understanding verbally to somebody else to get them to where I'm at. And that was my first exposure to, you know how to do something, but you don't know how to teach someone how to do it. And I realized that that's what I liked. I liked affecting somebody for positive change in their life. And so I got back to the States, transitioned out of the Marine Corps, and found an L1 seminar. And I think, like most people, that's kind of like a life-changing moment for them. And for me, it was life-changing, but I had a lot of things going on in my life at the time. The transition out of the Marine Corps is not easy. And I feel like that truly took about 2 years to feel like it was over. But it gave me something to focus on, something to grow on. In the meantime, I was switching careers over to become a financial advisor. So there was a lot of changes there. And shortly after I got my level 1, I was like, oh, gymnastics is cool. I'm good at it. I have in the Marine Corps, our physical fitness test revolves around pull-ups, sit-ups, and running. So over the course of my 13 years, I've done tens and tens of thousands of pull-ups. So I had this natural strength with pulling. So gymnastics came to me a little bit easier than I think most people, especially when it came to stuff on the bar. So I was like, I'm going to go to the CrossFit Gymnastics seminar. Let's see how that's going to be. And Chuck was the lead, and Tim and Frank were the assistant coaches at the time, and I loved it. 2018, yeah, April 2018. So I left that and I started applying those things to coaching and this class as much as I could. But my daughter was also gymnastics, so I would post up on Instagram her doing something, me spotting her, and me highlighting all the parts of the movement she was doing, whether it was strict toes to the bar. And she was at the time probably like 6 or 7 years old, so I could fold her in half, and she's doing toes to the bar, and I could explain to people like, this is how it should be. I'd tag Chuck, and Chuck, would share it. I look back at those things, I'm like, oh God, I'm so like cringy, like trying to get clout via Chuck. But I also realized it was me, without trying, being vulnerable to like, hey, I'm putting my very elementary coaching out in public so you guys can all criticize me or commend me, whatever that might be. But I was willing to do it publicly because I gained confidence through not only the level 1, but through CrossFit Gymnastics, but also through Chuck in the Instagram pages, and to be able to see that like, hey, I'm on the right path here. Definitely not the best coach I can be. And that's kind of worked its way into Chuck, like, hey, if you want to do an internship, let me know. And then that went through the full internship and joined the team later that year in 2018. Became friends with Tony, just as close as I am with Chuck, and traveled kind of the United States over the last 3 or 4 years since then. So that's how I met Chuck. And out of all that time, 4.5 years since I met Chuck, I think we've only seen each other in person maybe 4 or 5 times. That might be a weekend. It might be, he dropped into the Boston area early this year, I think in January or something like that, to coach a seminar. I didn't assist on the course, but we made a point to see each other 2 of those days. And it's funny because those 2 days for me, because I was going through, the last year or 2 for most people have been difficult. And I don't think I'm any different in that. Definitely not unique in that. But that 2 or 3 day period that Chuck was in town and we saw each other was extremely refreshing for me psychologically and emotionally and mentally, because it made me realize like, hey, this is a person that cares to be on my team, and they're also inviting me to be on their team, whatever that means. And whenever that requirement to come to bat for them comes up, it's like, I know this person's there for me, and just get that FaceTime in was deeply valuable to me. But we quickly went right back into deep conversations, and it was cool because he got to meet my kids for the first time, and we sat, ate pizza together with the kids too. And we actually kind of tried to draw the kids into the conversation too, which was really fun. And I think that's the value that I love about the relationship I have with Chuck is it's probably going to be.
That is such a like core memory night for me. that night we'll say like it was so low key, Lisa. Like we got pizza to go, and like they came to the hotel room, and we just like hang out, ate pizza, had like TV playing, kids hanging out. But it was a cool experience. I hope it's something that like they at least like retain some piece.
Connor said something about it last night.
That's so cool.
My son Connor, he said, Dad, you're hot. And I laughed because he was making fun of something that he accidentally said when we were all hanging out together. He said it to me in front of Chuck that night in the hotel room. He said, Dad, you're so hot. But he didn't mean it like that. But that's what he said. And I was like, you probably shouldn't call your dad hot, Connor. But he said it last night, again, joking around, because the conversation of the time we spent with Chuck was so meaningful that he remembers it. And to me, that was like big. I remember my time as a kid. I grew up in a very Italian family. On Saturday nights, we'd have homemade pasta dinner at my grandmother's house every Saturday night. And I learned how to converse at that dinner table. You know, when I was really little, I had to sit at the kids' table and I could just overhear things that were happening at the adult table. And that slowly transitioned to less of the adults coming to dinner over the years. So there was space for me at the table and I could sit and I could learn. And then I could start speaking up and interjecting my own points in the conversation. And a lot of times there were stupid points and I looked like an idiot, but I learned to converse. I learned the social etiquette of conversation. So for my kids to see that conversational etiquette, kind of that game of ping pong you play with someone verbally when you have a deep conversation, I think is something that I cherish about Chuck and I's relationship.
Yeah, and like we brought Connor and Olivia into the conversation. It was like very much so just trying to help them explore thinking like big picture, long term about what they may or may not want to do in their life, but not from the standpoint of like, what job do you want to have? What profession would you like to pursue? It's like, what do you really love doing? What would you be super happy to do for the rest of your life? And very rarely, especially as a kid, does somebody have an answer that involves like a fucking traditional education path into a 9-to-5 for the next like 30 to 40 years. And so we got to help them see like the opportunity and possibility of taking things that they love and building lives and businesses around them. And it was just a really cool experience. I've got no brothers, no sisters, small family, fractured, broken family. And so I've had very, very, very little interaction with any children at all as an adult until Vanessa and I had Liam. Liam's 4.5. And so like, I don't get to quite have those conversations with him. And so like, that was amazing. That will stay with me as like one of the better memories that I really have in some context of like guiding and helping and just like, I don't know, caring and conversing. And it's so cool. I believe very much so that the universe works through synchronicities as a way to show you when you're on the right path. That's just my own belief structure. And so when we were there in that hotel room that night, out of absolutely fucking nowhere, Connor goes, ha, 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 ha. It's a Woody Woodpecker laugh. Within maybe 2 to 3 minutes, I looked down at my phone because I had texted Vanessa what her and Liam were doing while I was gone. They're in Austin. We're in Boston. No communication at all up to that point. She's like, yeah, Liam's sitting here watching Woody Woodpecker.
Yeah.
Wild.
And I don't have anything that I can really wrap my head around with that besides like, I believe the universe works through synchronicities to show you omens when you're on the right path.
Yeah.
I've just got like a lot of those from Drew and I's relationship together. It is a thing that not only like feels good and is objectively and subjectively beneficial. But yeah, like I just keep seeing signs from the universe. Like, dude, the times that you guys have together, like you're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they sound like deeply like it's a connecting thing that just keeps reinforcing itself as you go through. And like I know I said to you often, Chuck, you're one of the most reflective people I know and able to access that sort of deeper questioning and rather than just sitting on the surface level. And I know we've enjoyed many conversations through coaching, but also, outside of that, just as friends. And it's always an amazing journey that takes you on, that you can, through that art, and like you were saying, Drew, learning that art of conversation and the back and forth, that it's not just someone talking at you, but they're actually asking your opinion. And I know as a child, similar, I was given a seat at my grandparents' table, and I used to talk to all the adults, and it got to the point where I felt like I couldn't relate to kids my own age, because I'm like, you're not talking about anything important, like you're just silly, like there's where we were talking about all the family stuff and all the other stuff at the table, and it's like having a seat there, and you learnt to listen, because otherwise if you didn't, it wasn't good, but also to share a thought or an idea and just see what happened and throw something out there.
Well, and like a quality in Drew that speaks to that, like throw something out and then like get feedback. Through the years, I've had no fucking shortage of humans reach out to try to like do the gymnastic adventure time. Very rarely does anybody want to do it for the right reasons and are willing to engage in the process of like really feedback driven growth. And like that was something that I picked up from Drew like really early on. That's been just an awesome piece of the relationship. Even in navigating internal business growth struggles with, the gymnastic course and CrossFit gymnastics, like there's a huge difference between how people in a similar realm and context of life can manage the same inputs. And like, if that input is just feedback, some people are highly emotionally attuned to the feedback, where at least like from all of my interactions with Drew, and I think why he and I get along so well is we're like, cool, noted, we'll adjust. Now, I don't know if that's the military, I don't know if that's innate, but it's a good life quality. So like, Liam, anybody out there, like learn to handle feedback well. And even if feedback is not actually constructive feedback and it is just criticism and dickheads, like don't take on the emotional weight from it, because what's done is done. The performance being judged is already passed. And so the only thing that you can do at all is like learn a lesson, move forward and apply. That's it. You can either sit here and fucking feel bad, or you can go do something about it and make it better in the future. And like got a huge sense of that from Drew, like immediately. And like that carries so much more weight than almost anybody appreciates.
I think go ahead, Lisa.
I was going to say that's a skill for you as well, Chuck, that, your inbox would be crushed with people wanting to go, look what I'm doing, Chuck, but to be able to filter through, well, who's, doing it for those right reasons and who can handle the feedback, or who just wants, wow, Chuck shared my video.
There's a big fucking difference, like getting tagged in some bar muscle up complex video versus getting tagged with somebody like doing the human movement thing with their kid, and like, that gets me in the feels. But like also like the purpose is education. It's not like, look at how good I am at fitness, like, because it doesn't fucking matter. Show me all of Glassman's open scores. Oh wait, there aren't any. It doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like about paying it forward, leaving it better than you found it, and like guiding people from where they're at to where they want to
go. Yeah, I think looking at the feedback piece is something that I've been working on. I was the worst at it when I was a kid. I was the worst. I had the worst temper. I was a soccer player, baseball player, basketball player when I was really little, and kind of slowly developed over time to high school. I was soccer only, but I was always mentally telling myself, you're the worst. You fucking suck. You're so bad. Because if I didn't succeed the way that I applied my skill, meaning if I had a soccer ball at my feet and I shot and it didn't go in, you suck. And it's like, I didn't consider that there's other variables. And so as I've kind of gone through life, I try to remind myself that the way that I'm doing something is the way that I chose to do something because of the variables that I assessed, and I assessed them in a certain way. Someone else, and Chuck is great at this, but my fiance is great at this, is they might remind you like you're missing other variables that you haven't even assessed, or you're over assessing variables. You're including variables that don't actually have an impact on the outcome. That has allowed me to figure out that there's way more than one way to do it. First of all, there's not just one way to do it right, but more importantly, it's okay. And you and I talked about this, Lisa, before we started, is it's okay to screw it up. Like you can mess up. You can make a decision because you believe this.
I think like that's the hugest life lesson.
How crazy
perfection's like infinity. Like what's the end of infinity? How big is it?
Exactly.
It exists as a construct that is otherwise unquantifiable, and like that's perfection. And so I find a lot of mental peace in that. It's like you always suck. So long as you're seeking to get better, like that's okay.
I mean, I think it's actually quite funny to think about how audacious we are as humans to think that we did do it right the first time. Like, are you fucking kidding me? If you did it right the first time, you're so lucky. You just lucked out, and you probably have no idea how you did it right the first time. So like, I'm at the point now in my life where I'm like, do it, fuck up, learn from it, because that process is faster than almost trying to over analyze the situation and get it right the first time. That paralysis by analysis kind of thing that, that mantra that people say. But for me, it's like, I'm trying to get myself more comfortable with do it, mess up. If you mess up, just whatever you do it, but then reflect on it. And that's where the actual impact exists, because the next iteration and then the next iteration becomes smoother, faster, more efficient, more impactful for whoever's receiving it. So it's hard, but having someone like Chuck ask, and a lot of times when Chuck and I have conversations, there's sometimes more questions than there are answers in either direction.
Dude, like, if you ever go back to our DMs, it's just like question mark.
And then I'm at first you're like, I don't know the answers to these, and then you're like, he didn't ask me because he wanted an answer. He wanted to ask me so I could ask myself until I figure out an answer, and that might take a while. But I found if you don't have someone in your life asking questions that a lot of times we aren't going to ask ourselves, let's be serious, because we're egotistical and we're afraid to look under the hood of our own engines. You're never going to find that kind of true version of yourself if someone's not asking the hard questions, and especially if you're not doing it yourself.
I think, and that's, I guess, the power I've found in the relationship I have with Chuck and Tony, which, just started as business. It's that speech thing again. Business coaching, but it's like they shine lights on the things that, you think that you've got tucked away, and, someone who cares enough about you to ask those questions about, well, why are you doing that particular thing, or why are you letting that happen, or whatever they, and that was the first time I've really had anyone in my life, particularly, ask those questions, and then but then also be okay with, this is a good space to answer that in, and there's no wrong answer here, and it's okay to just to say, I don't have the answer. I don't know why I do that, or why I feel this way. And it's been a powerful shift, which means I can translate that to other relationships in my life outside of, the business space. It's a big thing when you have that, to have the power of the questions.
For sure. So that's my background. It's a long one. 13 years in the Marine Corps, 5 years as a financial advisor now. I work with my uncle, but long story short, that's how I got to where I'm at now. And for me, that the place that I'm at now doesn't happen without the path that I've taken. Just like, for anybody, as difficult as it's been at times, as blossoming as it's been at times, the people that I have in my life are the reason why I'm here right now, doing what I'm doing. I'm not happy with where I'm at, but I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a way that it's like, I'm not satisfied, so I'm going to keep going. And whatever that means, I don't know where I want to end up in life. I just know that there's certain parts about my life that I am learning to respect a lot more. And that's my relationships is kind of near the top, and how I treat those people that I have relationships with that I really value. And that's less and less each year, but that's a good thing, because it allows me to drive that bandwidth to the people that matter.
And you soon become very good at filtering that, don't you? About who matters. And I think as we get older, it's I know I've got a few more years on you two boys, but it's you get to the point where you're like not prepared to, if I've got an hour to spend with you, I don't want it to be just, talk either just one-sided, or, talking about, you, or it's just empty. And you have occasions with that when you catch up with people, but if you find that you very quickly see the recurring pattern and go, hang on a minute, now that I've stopped being useful to you or serving you or doing things, it's like, once I pull back, it's like, oh, I don't hear from you. It's like, and then you go, cool, there are other relationships I can now invest that time in, and I accept that relationship for what it is. Like, I'll still say hi and, hey, how you going? And, care about you as a person, but I don't feel the need to engage with you on that next level, because that's not where we're at. And that's cool. Mm-hmm. But now I have time and energy to invest with, the other relationships that, feed my soul as well as I hope that I feed theirs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Relationships and conversation are qualitative, not quantitative. It's a lot of the fucking noise. Dudes, this is awesome. I definitely want to set up to do a part 2, because I think that There's a lot that I would actually like to specifically record with Drew around just money as a whole.
Yep.
For
we did want to do another money one
in the season of life, for Drew to just kind of like talk through, you know, as a financial advisor, like shit that he wishes everybody had told their kids from the very beginning.
Yeah.
As a coach, like shit that coaches should pay attention to from the very beginning. I think there's a lot of value in going through some of the nuance, the numbers, and I would be interested if you'd be open to it, like exploring, talking through divorce and experience that like we've gone through. And just, I don't know, man, I love you a ton, and you are one of the most valuable people in my life.
Love you too, man. I'd be happy to talk about any of that stuff. And, you know, if we want to make this a recurring thing every once in a while, I'd be happy to do that too. Easy conversations to have.
Yeah, we'll set that up.
We can get you your wealth coached content at the same time.
True.
Because I want to see that really grow, because it really is, that is the value that like, that's the shit that changes people's lives. Anyway, love you guys a ton.
All right.
Appreciate it, guys.
See you guys. Thanks, you guys.
Take care. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to another conversation with Chuck Bennington. Hope it was enjoyable for you. Hope there was some value and some benefit in it. Maybe even had a laugh or two. Even though these are primarily for me and Liam, we sure love to help a friend in need, because it's a friend indeed. So if there was some piece of it that was good, please feel free to share it with somebody else and pay it forward. If you think what we're doing is rad and you want to support it, please just like, subscribe, share, tell a friend. Appreciate you, dudes.